But what I love about the opportunity this weekend is to talk a bit about what is the evidence for God? What is the evidence that there's a creator? Because as Matt correctly says, there are a lot of atheists who maintain that science disproves the existence of God. And, it's not hard to find people who adhere to that position. In fact, one of them is Dr. Jerry Coyne. Dr. Coyne is a professor of ecology and evolution at the University of Chicago. And he wrote an opinion piece for USA Today recently in which he railed against religion. And he said these words: "Science and faith are fundamentally incompatible. Science helps religion only by disproving its claims." And friends, there was a time in my life where I would have agreed with him 100%. Because as Matt said, I was an atheist for much of my life. Until my wife, who was agnostic, because a friend invited her to a church like this, and she asked questions and went on a journey and decided to become a follower of Christ. And it was the changes in her values and character and morality and the way she treated me and the children that really piqued my curiosity and encouraged me to take my journalism training and legal training and investigate, is there any credibility to any world religion, but especially to Christianity? And as Matt said, I spent about 2 years of my life investigating these kind of issues. And my research then and since then, as new discoveries have been made, my research has taken me to the exact opposite conclusion as Dr. Coyne. My conclusion, based on the data that I've analyzed, is that the evidence of science does not disprove God, but it points powerfully toward a supernatural creator who looks suspiciously like the God of the Bible. In other words, I believe that science affirms Psalm 102, verse 25, where it says, "In the beginning, you, God, laid the foundations of the earth, and the heavens are the work of your hands." What is the evidence of science that doesn't disprove God, but points toward God? The first area I want to talk about is the area of cosmology. Fancy word, all it means is the study of the origin of the universe. Where did this universe come from? And for centuries, people believe the universe is eternal. The universe has always existed. But thanks to persuasive philosophical and scientific discoveries, just over the last 50 years or so, virtually all scientists now believe that the universe had a sudden beginning at some point in the finite past. And even though there have been a lot of various models of the universe that have been proposed, and you'll see these written about in the newspaper from time to time, these exotic ideas about what the universe is, the Born-Guth-Vilenkin theorem tells us that any universe that is expanding on the average through its history, like our universe, must have a space-time boundary in the past. In other words, it must have a beginning. All of these models, according to this theorem, go back, and they go back to a beginning. One of the formulators of this theorem is Dr. Alexander Vilenkin, who's a director of the Institute of Cosmology at Tufts University. And he said this: "With the proof now in place, cosmologists can no longer hide behind the possibility of a past eternal universe." In other words, a universe that has always existed. No, he says, there can be no escape. They have to face the problem of a cosmic beginning, a beginning of the universe. Well, why is that a problem? Why is that? Well, it's only a problem if you're an atheist. Because if it's true, as these scientists believe, that the universe had a beginning, that leads to what has become known as the Kalam Cosmological Argument for the existence of God. Another fancy term, but it's a very simple argument for God's existence. It just has three simple parts. The first part is this: whatever begins to exist has a cause. Now stop for a second there. Can you think of anything in the world that has started to exist that does not have a cause behind it? No. Wherever something begins to exist, there is always a cause behind it. In fact, the most famous skeptic of all time, David Hume, said, "I never asserted so absurd a proposition as that anything might arise without a cause." So whatever begins to exist has a cause. Second, the universe began to exist. Virtually every scientist now concedes that the universe and time itself had a beginning at some point in the finite past. And so the conclusion flows naturally from that. Whatever begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist. Therefore, the universe has a cause. And what kind of a cause can bring an entire universe in all its complexity? What kind of a cause can bring a universe into existence out of nothing? Well, first, it must be itself uncaused, because you can't have an infinite regress of causes. Second, it must be immaterial or spirit, because it existed before the material world. It must be eternal, because it created time. It must be smart and powerful because of the precision and the power of the creation event. It must be personal. It must have a personal will because it needed to make the decision to create. And finally, the principle of Occam's razor tells us that there would just be one creator. And so you just review those characteristics of this cause behind the universe. It must be itself uncaused, immaterial or spirit, eternal, incredibly smart, incredibly powerful, personal, and one of a kind. And that is a pretty good starting point for a description of God. In fact, Dr. Arno Penzias, who won the Nobel Prize, he's a physicist, he was one of those who helped figure out that the universe did have a beginning. He said it this way. He said, the best data that we have concerning the origin of the universe are exactly what I would have predicted had I nothing to go on but the 5 books of Moses, the Psalms, and the Bible as a whole. This is from the Nobel-winning physicist, Arno Penzias. In other words, give me the Bible, and just reading that, I would have predicted exactly what physics tells me about the origin of the universe. So cosmology goes an incredibly long way toward establishing the existence of a creator. Again, science here is not disproving a creator, it's pointing toward a creator. Now, before I move on, there are a couple of challenges that atheists will often make to this assertion. The first one they'll make, very commonly, is, okay, you're saying that God created the universe. Well, then who created God? Right? Who created God? As if that's some mind-stumping issue. Well, wait a second here. Let's think for a second. The argument is not whatever exists has a cause. The argument is whatever begins to exist has a cause. God, by definition, has never begun to exist. He has always existed. He is eternal. In fact, before he invented time, there was just timelessness. In fact, atheists shouldn't have a problem with believing that something is eternal, because they used to believe, until the evidence disproved them, that the universe is eternal. But scientists now believe that the universe had a beginning, and therefore it needs a cause to explain it. The second objection comes from a popular book that was recently written by Stephen Hawking called The Grand Design. Anybody read this book, Grand Design? This is what he says in that book. This is what got so much press attention when it came out. He said, because there is a law such as gravity, the universe can and will create itself from nothing. In other words, God didn't create the universe. Because there's such a thing as gravity, it popped into existence by itself out of nothing. Now, this has been roundly criticized, including by many of Stephen Hawking's colleagues, and the reason should be obvious. He's only postponing creation one stage. In other words, if gravity could cause the universe to pop into existence, where did gravity come from? Who created that? What is its origin? Who put it there? In other words, you still need a creator to have created gravity in the first place to bring the universe into existence. And so Hawking's theory has failed to do away with God. On the contrary, the beginning of the universe points powerfully and persuasively toward the existence of a creator.